Okay.
Esteva, all is working well?
I believe, yes, it is working. And the only thing I have to do now is to put the, okay, I will, okay, perfect. I'm recording, okay, the session. Perfect. Okay. And I believe it's time to start. Okay, ready? We are on the air. Thank you very much to all of you attending this fifth Tobacco Control Symposium organized by the Catalan Institute of Oncology and the WHO and the World Health Organization. It's a pleasure to briefly introduce you the people who will be welcoming us. Dr. Ana Clopés, she's the Deputy General Director of the Catalan Institute of Oncology. We will be introducing our other colleagues, Dr. Carmen Cabezas, who is the Deputy Director General of Health Promotion in the Agency of Public Health in Catalonia, from the government of Catalonia, and also Angela. It's always difficult to pronounce your name. Ciobanu, Angela Ciobanu, Dr. Angela Ciobanu, who is officer from the European headquarters of the World Health Organization in Denmark. Thank you very much. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esteva. Dear Dr. Carmen Cabezas, Deputy Director of Health Promotion, dear Dr. Angela Ciobanu, Officer of the World Health Organization European Region, dear Dr. Esteva Fernández, Director of Epidemiology and Prevention of Catalan Institute of Oncology, ICO, and Chair of the Symposium, dear all. It's a pleasure for me and for the Catalan Institute of Oncology to welcome to you to a new edition of the ICO World Health Organization Symposium on Tobacco Control. Catalan Institute of Oncology, ICO, is a public comprehensive cancer center that has the mission to work to reduce the impact of cancer in Catalonia. The ICO is a young organization of only 25 years old, but has achieved remarkable activity and recognition in cancer care research and cancer prevention. The Tobacco Control Unit of ICO, as World Health Organization Collaborating Center jointly with the WHO Bureau, have prepared an interesting program for the symposium. This year, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a twofold impact in the symposium. First, we have gone online. And second, the fifth edition will be devoted to... sorry, Esteva, the micro. The first, yes, thank you. This fifth edition will be devoted to the tobacco endgame in COVID-19 times. The tobacco endgame is currently a key concept. Tobacco control suggests moving toward a tobacco-free world in the availability of tobacco products significantly restricted, hopefully reaching smoking rates below 5%. To date, only a few governments have included the tobacco endgame in their tobacco control policies. And secondly, but not less important, we cannot ignore that COVID-19 pandemic has an important impact on tobacco control at different levels. In the first weeks of the pandemic, we have to remember, early research, perhaps better to say quick and dirty research, indicated a potential protective effect of smoking on COVID-19 occurrence. Whilst the exact role of nicotine, not smoking, in COVID-19 infection is not clear to date, evidence has accumulated on the negative impact on COVID-19 progression. The pandemic is affecting the commitment of governments in tobacco control, as has prompted new field on interface of the tobacco industry. You are going to discuss this afternoon these topics and the interaction of the pandemic with tobacco control at different levels, counting with the experience and sharing the experience in several countries, from Netherlands to Brazil. I want to thank the speakers who are contributing to this symposium, and also the organizer from World Health Organization and the team of Tobacco Control Unit of our institution. The symposium is one of the more precious activities of our center, and in these difficult times, having the symposium is also a good indicator of our commitment to tobacco control and wish to go ahead the pandemic. And finally, I want to thank all of you who are attending to the symposium through ICO's YouTube channel. You are the ultimate reasons of the symposium. We are proud to have this symposium and offer to all of you a space, a virtual one this year, to debate about the implication of COVID-19 and pandemic for tobacco control policies and tobacco and game in the current social and political context. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Ana. Dr. Cabezas.
Dr. Silvano, Dr. Clopes, Dr. Fernandez, dear all, it's a great pleasure for me to be here in representation of the health department. And I like to thank all of you, not only for this symposium, but also for all your work during the year, this difficult year, because we have been suffering the pandemic, and the pandemic has many impacts. This impact in the health of the society, but also in the economic side of the society, and also in the social aspect of our life. And all of this impact are related with tobacco and with tobacco control, because the people that is suffering from the disease and also from the lockdown measures are having difficulties in their lives and having difficulties in order to control smoking. And that is very difficult also for the health systems to continue to working in smoking cessation strategies. And we have been looking at the effects in our health system on these several months of struggle in front of the COVID disease. And we have been observing the impact in the control of all the chronic disease, of all the non-communicable diseases. And that is very important from this health system point of view, but also is very important related with the fact that many efforts also in the public health level are dedicated to COVID and not so strongly to the other issues like smoking, prevention and control. And that is very, very important for all of us. And I think that this fifth symposium is very important, and the program is very interesting. I think that this first roundtable about the effects of COVID in smoking and in the smoking problem is very, very important. And also the second roundtable about the effects in specific countries. And I think that it will be very interesting for us to learn about the experience of the other countries and to share our experiences. And I like to thank especially to the people, to the team of Dr. Fernandez in the Tobacco Control Unit in the Institut Català d'Oncologia, and also all the people to WHO, because we are working very close in some aspect, and especially in the Region for Health Network, and they have been doing a very, very good work, doing many interesting webinars and so on, and many documents, and also the Barcelona office too, related with the fight against the COVID. And thank you all the participants in the symposium too.
Thank you very much, Carmen. We'll ask now Dr. Angela Chabal.
Yeah, thank you very much, Esteve. It is also great honor and pleasure for me to open the 5th symposium on tobacco control that have very actual topic, is practically the tobacco and game in COVID-19 times. First of all, I also would like to thank the Catalan Institute of Oncology, one of the most active WHO collaborating center for organization of this event. And I also would like to thank all invitees, participants, all partners in the area of tobacco control for their dedication, perseverance, and hard work that is directed to enhance people's well-being and reduce their health risk associated with tobacco use, thereby also contributing to better population health. The 2020 is a landmark for tobacco control, but at the same time, it's a very challenging year. It's a landmark because it has been 15 years since the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control came into force, and so have been some major achievements since 2005. Nowadays, almost 5 billion people around the globe are protected by at least one best practice on tobacco control measure, and over 1 billion people are protected with high taxes on tobacco products, the most cost-effective way to reduce tobacco prevalence and which saved lives. At the same time, the COVID pandemic put the entire world through the historical trying time, and for almost 1 year, all the governments over the world are fighting with COVID, improving the prevention activities directed to reduce transmission of disease and treating infected people. However, in a world living with COVID, as all of you mentioned, we need to consider not only the risk of the COVID infection transmission, where the human behavior is the major risk factor, but also the other health risks. And one of these is tobacco use that causes 8 million deaths every year, being the key risk factor for cardiovascular disease, lung disorders, cancer, diabetes, hypertension, and many others. Along with this, evidence also suggests that smoking is also associated with increased severity of diseases and deaths in hospitalized COVID patients. Given the link between tobacco use and SARS-CoV-2, tobacco control remains crucial during all this pandemic, and WHO calls all the countries to continue their efforts to curb the tobacco epidemic and stands ready to support. The WHO Convention on Tobacco Control is the best response to the threat to the health and well-being posed by tobacco. I would like to thank you and wish all of you the success of our meeting.
Anna, thank you. And now, Dr. Lopez will officially give the welcome and starting point to the symposium.
It's very easy, Esteva. You have a very good program in the symposium, and you are welcome, and you have to work a lot. Thank you, everybody. Esteva, de micro.
Okay, my microphone, mic is on now. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much, Angela, Carmen, for this welcome from all the partners involved in this symposium. It's a pleasure. So, without more delays, we will move to the first table. I invite now to. Well, I will try to share a slide to remember which is the program of today. And very briefly, I'm going to introduce. Okay, yes, Cristina Martinez and Dr. Elisabetta Ledeva. Thank you very much for being here. Christina works here at the Tobacco Control Unit of the Catalan Institute of Oncology. She is originally a nurse and then did the PhD in public health and tobacco control after stays in the University of California in San Francisco, both predoctoral and postdoctoral stage. And her main area of research is the evaluation of tobacco control policies in healthcare services. She has been assessing the impact of smoke-free policies, evaluating the effectiveness of smoking cessation, the effectiveness of training programs for health professionals, and with innovation and introducing new tools from the technologies of communication to improve all this training and to implement them. She is, in fact, one of the persons in Spain more actively working in this field of implementation research of evidence-based interventions. So thank you very much, Cristina, for sharing this table together with Lisa, who is a public health specialist now working at the WHO in Denmark, in the European office, in the European region office, after her training as a psychologist and a Master of Public Health in the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She has been in charge for NCDs, non-communicable diseases, and the development of strategies to tackle them, and more recently also working very actively in the tobacco control unit of the regional office. Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you very much, Cristina. The floor is yours, and let's go for the first table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Esteban, for introducing us. It's a great pleasure to be here in this fifth symposium of the WHO ICO and talking about tobacco control in general, but with a specific topic that is very sensitive to the time, the COVID-19 epidemic. So the first roundtable is going to be devoted to talk about tobacco and game and COVID-19, and me and Dr. Lisa is going to co-chair. We are going to co-chair this table. We have here 3 panelists that are going to be introduced, but we invite them to turn their camera on in order that they come into this session. We are going to introduce them later on. But in order to have this session, we are going to have the opportunity to talk about this topic, specifically tobacco and game and COVID-19, with these 3 panelists. And these 3 panelists that are going to speak one after the other, they're going to be introduced. But we want you to be very active in our session, and you will have the opportunity to be active by 2 different systems. The first one is the chat. You have a chat on the YouTube channel where you are following us, and you have there the opportunity to share your thoughts, your comments, and also to pose your questions. And after the meeting, after the session, we are going to have the opportunity to allocate the questions to each of the panelists that you have raised your questions. So please be active using the channel. The second way to be active is using the Twitter. You have the hashtag that has been shared, and then you can use the social media in order to broadcast or also to post your comments about this meeting. So please use both channels in order to make a visibility about what we are doing today in this symposium. So now it's time that Lisa introduce the first panelist. So go ahead, Lisa, and I will be here following you, turning on my camera.
Yes, dear Esteve, dear Cristina, thank you so much for the introduction. And good afternoon, colleagues. It's my great pleasure to join you all today and to be a co-chair for this roundtable. So you just heard from Cristina how this session will be built. So without any further delay, let me introduce to you our first speaker, Shayla Duffy, who is the Chief Executive of Action on Smoking and Health Scotland. So in addition to leading this independent charity, which takes action to reduce the harm caused by tobacco, Shayla is also active in the advocacy and health in all policy groups, chairs the Scottish Coalition on Tobacco, and is a member of the government's Ministerial Working Group on Tobacco Control. And it is under Shayla's leadership that ASH Scotland received the World No Tobacco Day Medal in 2018, recognizing the outstanding work of the charity and decades of achievement. So we're delighted to have you today with us and eager to learn more about the impact of COVID-19 and UK Brexit on Scotland's tobacco and game commitment. The floor is yours, Shayla. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to ICO and WHO for the invitation to join the seminar. Today, I bring you greetings from Scotland within the UK, and I will talk to you about what we have been experiencing. And I plan to talk with no slides, but I will make my notes and further information web links available to the organisers, should you wish to follow them, so that you don't need to feel you should take notes when I'm speaking. So, ASH Scotland is one of 4 independent ASH organisations within the UK. And there is no one UK voice on tobacco control, nor is there one UK policy approach. The Westminster Parliament in London exercises some central UK government powers, for example, business regulation and tobacco tax. However, the Scottish Parliament at Holyrood in Edinburgh and the Welsh Assembly Government and the Northern Ireland Assembly each have devolved areas of powers, for example, powers to regulate for health and on the enforcement of retail regulation. And each nation makes its own national laws and policies under these devolved powers. England, however, does not have a separate assembly for devolved powers, and its health regulations are dealt with for England by the Westminster Government. Scotland was among the first worldwide to set an endgame vision and target, and our 2034 vision was announced by the Scottish Government in its 2013 Tobacco Control Strategy. And that strategy took as key themes tackling the challenge of health inequalities in tobacco, preventing youth uptake of smoking, increasing protection from secondhand smoke, and supporting smoking cessation. And the 2034 target was modelled at 5-year intervals, and that modelling took account of the 5 levels of multiple deprivation in Scotland's society. So Scotland's vision is that by the year 2034, a child born anywhere in Scotland in the year that the target was announced in 2013 reaches the age of 21, reaches adulthood in a community where adult smoking rates stand at 5% or less. Now, the idea of a UK-wide endgame target for 2030 was recently proposed in Westminster, but it is not yet a UK government commitment, and it has not been modelled, and it is not backed, as Scotland's endgame target is, by a comprehensive strategic framework of actions to deliver it. So Scotland is proud of our reputation for being bold on tobacco control measures. And that is because we have been tackling a legacy of tobacco harms and use. Throughout Scotland today, about 17% of adults are smokers, but that figure masks significant inequalities. Tobacco use is very closely aligned with social and economic deprivation. And smoking rates in Scotland's poorest fifth of our communities stand at 32%, whereas the smoking rate in our most affluent and our richest fifth of communities is at 6%. So the burden of health harms and preventable early deaths falls most heavily on those communities where people are facing adverse life circumstances and already facing significant challenges to their health and health equity. And Scotland's approach to health in general is distinctive within the UK. We aim to move to an economy that values well-being as much as prosperity. Our Stop Smoking approach is to support and encourage people to quit your way, and Scotland has set 6 public health priorities for the next 10 years, which the new Public Health Scotland body, which was only formed in April 2020, is being asked to deliver against. Public health priority 4 out of the 6 is about reducing the use of and the harms from tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. So, in that hopeful and optimistic context, we were hit, as everyone was in March this year, by the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to respond urgently to contain it. And that has understandably absorbed the capacity of our government at all levels, UK, Scottish, local government, and our national health services and all services, and has led to staff being redeployed to deal with the pandemic response. As a result of which, previously planned disease prevention activities and previously planned tobacco control actions have been deprioritised. And across Scotland and beyond, many people have moved to working from home, so the kinds of protections gained from smoke-free workplaces are not in force. And we expect that while some people are motivated and have moved to quit smoking in the pandemic, for others, their use of cigarettes and other health-harming substances has likely increased. And we expect statistics in Scotland in January 2021. We know that Stop Smoking services are struggling to provide socially distanced support for quitting smoking and struggling with depleted staff numbers. And we would expect that the inequalities in our population's health caused by unemployment, low income, mental ill health, and unequal use of and access to health service resources will only increase under these pressures. There is some good news potentially. At national level, the pandemic shone a spotlight on the importance of public health, and the unequal impacts of COVID on our population have surfaced again the need to reduce health inequalities. And the move towards online working has created some improved engagement opportunities for people who are living and working in remote and rural areas. But for Scotland, COVID-19 as a set of pressures and context comes on top of the existing ongoing pressures generated by the exit of the UK from the European Union and the negotiations around that. Scotland did not and does not support the UK leaving the European Union, but as part of the United Kingdom, we are bound to that departure. So much of our civil service and government capacity, including policy and legal capacity, was already taken up with Brexit preparation and planning before COVID, dealing with issues of EU powers coming back to the UK and systems, and issues such as picture health warnings on tobacco and track and trace systems to prevent illicit tobacco trade. And these concerns had already significantly delayed planned policy and regulatory measures. Now, there are some strong differences of view among the 4 UK nations about where those powers should come to, which are being taken back to the UK. And there are disagreements between Westminster and Scottish Holyrood parliaments. So, for example, the Scottish Government would like to retain its freedom to respond to the health challenges Scotland faces. However, the Westminster Government has proposed an internal markets bill to harmonise trade conditions throughout the UK, which means any new Scottish public health regulations could be legally challenged by businesses. And we are already seeing signs at UK level that some large commercial interests are viewing Brexit as a chance to push for the deregulation of health-harming products in the UK. In my view, the UK is in no way prepared for Brexit in terms of trade and customs, and we should expect to see price increases and blocks to the flow of goods and services, I believe including medicines. So how should we respond to such a challenging environment? And I'm just scrolling my notes. So from a Scottish advocacy perspective, ASH Scotland will continue to push to maintain existing regulations and to move forward with new necessary regulations. So for example, here in Scotland, we plan to put limits on domestic e-cigarette advertising. And we would like, ASH Scotland would like to close the loopholes that would mean that heated tobacco products and accessories at the moment are not treated as tobacco products in the same way across the board. So ASH Scotland will continue to make the case for tobacco control as a necessary fundamental part of tackling health inequalities and a necessary part of our building back better after the COVID pandemic. To achieve this, we must review and update our approach to how we motivate and support people to quit smoking, which will include targeting stop smoking support services on communities where the need is greatest due to social inequity and the highest smoking rates exist. We must encourage and support smokers to make quit attempts, to stay quit, and if people do smoke, to take tobacco smoke right outside. And we should continue to monitor and push back against industry tactics, including corporate social responsibility, third-party funding and influencing, and presenting themselves as stakeholders in harm reduction. We who have an interest in protecting and promoting health need to join up across disciplines and sectors so we can maximise the beneficial impacts of our very limited capacity and resources. And in Scotland, we are looking to join up our learning and to work together across health-harming substances, tobacco, health-harming foods and drinks, alcohol, drugs, to put resources together to deliver an overarching Live Well message. And I think that joined up approach is probably one that goes well beyond Scotland. I would like to end by quoting Professor Sir Michael Marmot from a blog published 2 days ago in the BMJ. Reflecting on a post-COVID world, he noted we must not only build back better, but also build back fairer. And he said, a fair distribution of health and well-being have to be at the heart of building back fairer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much, Sheila, because it has been a pleasure to hear you, and it's a very pointing out a topic right now, talking about the end game of tobacco and also the COVID. And here we have an opportunity, and we have seen the example of Scotland. I'm pretty sure that our the persons who are following us through the YouTube channel have plenty of questions. So it's the opportunity that you send this question to Sheila, because we will have later on the opportunity to chat with our panelists. And we thank you very much for your talk. And we are going to now move to the next panelist. Okay. So the next panelist is Dr. Silvano Gallus. He's going to talk about smoking and COVID incidence, severity, and mortality. But let me please introduce to Silvano Gallus. He is a researcher. He is the leader of the Laboratory of Lifestyle and Epidemiology of Mario Negri Institute in Milan, Italy. And since 2017, he is the honorary associate professor at the University of Nottingham, UK. His main lines of research include tobacco control in Italy and in Europe, and also he is an expert in epidemiology of tinnitus. He has plenty of experience publishing, and he is also the editor of multiple journals, including the Scientific Report and Journal of Epidemiology. So, Silvano, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christine. So let me compartir, let me share the screen. I will talk to you. So first of all, good afternoon, everybody. I will talk to you about the relationship between smoking and COVID-19 incidence, severity, and mortality. Several reviews, systematic reviews and meta-analysis are available on the relationship between smoking and COVID-19. I will show you findings from Simons and colleague. This is a living review, systematic review and meta-analysis updated to November 2020. Living means that there are several versions each month, and another meta-analysis by Ratanavanic and Glantz published in August 2020. We also, in collaboration with WHO, we are conducting a systematic review in order to understand the relationship not only between tobacco and COVID-19, but also between tobacco, cigarette tobacco and other tobacco products, and also electronic cigarettes and COVID-19. Our review will also include those topics of this presentation, inherent to this presentation. I will not show you all findings, the forest plots from our review, because you can imagine it was a titanic task, and it is still a titanic task to finalize it, but I want to show you some preliminary findings. This is the list of participants, of contributors to this systematic review, and also Esteve Fernandez of the Institute Català d'Oncologia is contributing substantially to this systematic review. This slide allows us, myself, to show you the relatively complex methodology used in this systematic review, involving a traditional review of PubMed, Medline, and Web of Science, and the traditional review also of selected preprint archives, and involving also an umbrella review, therefore a review of systematic reviews and meta-analysis in order to identify original articles that have been identified previously from other systematic reviews and meta-analysis. I will show you these preliminary results, and therefore that, as I told you, it was a titanic task. We found 314 eligible publications, including 170 peer-reviewed publications and 144 preprints. A huge number of studies, of publications were case series showing the smoking prevalence in samples of SARS-CoV-2 positive subjects or in COVID-19 patients. 45 publications were inherent to the risk, to the let's say relationship, the association between smoking and the COVID-19 incidence, and 24, 89, and 51 publications were dealing with the role of smoking on COVID-19 hospitalization, severity, and mortality. With reference to the role of smoking on SARS-CoV-2 infection, I want to show you this slide showing the forest plot at the end of all the publications showing the smoking prevalence in case series. This forest plot is limited to peer-reviewed publications, and therefore we found 60 peer-reviewed publications providing information on the prevalence of current smokers among COVID-19 patients. And as you can see, the heterogeneity of the results is huge. The estimates were ranged between 0% and 70%, but it's true that most of these studies found a relatively low smoking prevalence as compared to the national estimates from the studies, from the surveys of the general adult population. However, all these, or most of these studies had suffered from various forms of selection bias and suffered from information bias also. More importantly, all these studies were case series that by design do not have a comparison group, a control group. And in epidemiology, these types of studies cannot be used to support any causal association and any causal conclusion. We need to rely on cohort studies, on the general population. Simons and colleagues considered all these cohort studies in their systematic review and meta-analysis, and used the meta-analytic approach in order to find out the pooled estimates. And for these forest plots, consider all the studies dealing with the relationship, the association between smokers versus never smokers, and the risk of incidence of COVID-19. And as you can see, the risk of current versus never smokers was 0.69, statistically significant, and the risk of ex versus never smokers was 1.02. Therefore, whereas it is not evident any relationship with ex smokers, current smokers appear to be protected as compared to never smokers from the incidence of COVID-19. But however, what it is possible to notice is that the good quality studies in this forest plot are only 2, and actually we should rely the evidence from good quality studies. We identified 15 papers in our review dealing that were cohorts dealing with the relationship between smoking and COVID-19 incidence. And what we have noticed is that out of 15 studies, 10 were preprints and therefore were not published in peer-reviewed journals. 5 out of 15 studies were based on limited populations, on a limited number of cases, likely underpowered studies with cases less than 200 cases. 9 out of 15 studies were provided estimates, relative risk estimates from univariate analysis, and therefore not adjusted, not even for age and sex. And more importantly, we observed that most of these studies, 9 out of 15 studies, were not based on a generalizable population. In fact, we noticed that most of these studies were based on specifically selected populations. The population of subjects with influenza-like symptoms who voluntarily went to be tested because they were suspected to have COVID due to their influenza-like symptoms. This population of suspected with COVID-19 symptoms or with influenza-like symptom is not a random sample of the general population, but is a selected populations, since this population has an overabundance of current smokers. Why this? Because it is well known that current smokers have more frequently than non-smokers influenza-like symptoms. This has been shown also in various studies. For example, this one from Cho and colleagues in 2020 recently, showing using data from the UK Biobank and showing that current smokers had a higher risk of being tested than never smokers. For this reason, also assuming no relationship between current smoking and COVID-19 incidence, as you can see in this infographic, also assuming this, considering population based on cohorts suspected to have COVID would result in an apparent reduced risk of COVID-19 for current versus never smokers. I tried to explain this selection bias for these the majority of these studies in this infographic, and I will be happy to share this slide with you. With reference to the role of smoking on COVID-19 progression, we have this meta-analysis by Patanavanic and Glantz, published in August 2020 in Nicotine and Tobacco Research, showing that average smokers had an increased risk of smoking progression, therefore smoking severity and mortality. In fact, the odds ratio, the pooled odds ratio was 1.91 for ever versus never smokers. Simon et al. Provided other estimates, and they found for severity, for COVID-19 severity, that the pooled relative risk was 1.26 for current versus never smokers, and it was 1.52 for ex versus never smokers. However, the pooled estimate was statistically significant only for ex versus never smokers. With reference to COVID-19 mortality, Simons and colleagues found a relative risk for current versus never smokers of 1.05 and for ex versus never smokers of 1.39. Also in this case, it was statistically significant or only for the relationship between ex versus never smokers and with reference to COVID-19 mortality. We can conclude that the studies showing a relatively low smoking prevalence among COVID-19 patients have major limitations, and they do not have a control group. They are based on case series, and therefore they cannot be used to support any causal conclusion. We should rely on cohort studies. However, it's true that there is a high number of studies. Most of the studies have major limitations, and the number of high-quality studies is limited. The evidence actually should rely exclusively on high-quality studies, and particularly those studies that are not based on COVID-19 suspected populations. we found that not us, but Simon's colleagues and also Patanaranic and Glantz found that the smokers increase the risk of severity and mortality. Such as risk was significant for ex, but not for current versus never smokers. I thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much, Silvano, for your presentation and also for taking on the task, on this huge task, as you call it, titanic task, to review that much of evidence. And we are very much looking forward to see the final results published, hopefully soon. So thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to invite our final speaker for this roundtable, Dr. Armando Peruga, a well-known, I'm sure to all of you, public health specialist and tobacco control professional who worked across continents and has decades of valuable experience. So Armando is a dear colleague of us. He started working for the Pan American Health Organization in 1990 and was leading its tobacco control for many years, and then also dedicated around 10 years to work at Tobacco Free Initiative Unit based in Geneva. Currently, Armando holds the position of a researcher at the Biomedical Research Institute of Beltwich in Barcelona and the Center for Epidemiology and Health Policy of the University del Desarola in Chile. And Armando, it's great to have you with us today, and we are very much looking forward to learn more from you on the topic, which, if I may say so, has been controversial and divisive in public health. So how to think about harm reduction, and specifically in the frame of tobacco endgame. So Armando, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. I'm trying to solve a little technical problem here because my screen froze and I don't know if I'm sharing or not
not yet. I cannot see the presentation yet.
I don't know why I can't, my screen completely froze. So I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
Do you need help, Armando, with the slides?
Well, the problem is that the whole screen froze and I don't see. I'm not able to share my screen.
No worries. Could you please send me your presentation? I will try to do my better in order to project it. And meanwhile, maybe we can comment, Lisa and I, whether there are some questions for the panelists that have already presented. So we can use that time to make some questions to our colleagues, Silvano, and also to Sheila. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So maybe Armando, you can restart, for example, your computer if needed. Yes, and join us.
Yeah.
Until then, we will ask questions which we received through YouTube channel, and also if the participants of this event would like to comment on anything or give their feedback, please let us know with Christina.
Yes.
Yes. Shall I? Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, then I will, if you don't mind, Christina, I will then pose a question to Sheila. Sheila, we have received a question in the chat from Laurent Hubert. So he's asking whether will Scotland achieve its target with classic tobacco control measures such as Empower and FCTC articles? Or will it require considering new innovative measures? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Laurent. I think Scotland is not on track, and neither is anywhere else in the UK, towards achieving its goals at this time. So we will need to maintain classical measures because I think they will be threatened we will need to look at novel approaches. If you are suggesting harm reduction, that is very, very strongly advocated by colleagues mainly based in England, and they, to me, have not yet proven the case that that is the main answer. I think we need to be looking at reaching the communities where smoking rates are highest and where cessation services are not really accessed. And we need to look at creating environments that support quits, that do not support commercial pressures to start and continue smoking.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Christina?
So we are going to use also this time. I have seen that Armando has already solved his problem with the slides, but we are going to use this time, if you don't mind, Armando, to make a question also to Silvano, and then we are going to move to your presentation. Okay? So we have a question from one of our participants in the YouTube channel, who has asked whether there are any kind of information or scientific data that emphasizes the increased risk of passive smoking inside home during the COVID times where we were confined, many of us.
So this is out of the scope of our review. This is out of the scope of our review. However, I also, at least in Italy, I also am conducting several studies, actually, in order to understand which was the impact of the lockdown on smoking in Italy, for example. And whereas we have found a decrease of smoking prevalence, this is mainly due to occasional smokers who quit because maybe they were young smokers going to their home without the possibility to smoke inside homes and so on. But on the contrary, we found an increased consumption among smokers. And therefore, in my opinion, although we do not have data directly on secondhand smoke inside the homes, in my opinion, this could be a good point. This could be the real that maybe the secondhand smoke inside homes have been increased during the lockdown.
In fact, I think that there are colleagues here in Spain that have monitored this. I don't know whether this data has been published yet, but I don't think so. But I know that there were like some surveys here from several organizations, including the CPT, who were interested in this because the confinement had these consequences, no? That you are more time locked down, and then it's normal that more people is exposed to secondhand smoke, with the consequence that the harmful consequence that secondhand smoke has for the population.
Yes, I can just add that in Italy the consumption of cigarettes increased by 9% during the lockdown. Overall, considering also those quitting due to the lockdown.
Thank you, Silvano. We are going to continue the discussion later on. And now we are going to move the presentation of Armando. So Lisa, please, you presented Armando. Now you need to share your slides, Armando.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to reboot the whole computer. Let's see, now that I'm trying to share the screen, if it happens. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, it works.
Clear.
Okay, very good. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. I would like to mention that a few days ago, the former regional Minister of Health for the government of one of the autonomous regions of Spain, the Canary Islands, said at an event sponsored by Philip Morris that is dishonest to ignore the third way of new tobacco products. He was referring to the role in tobacco harm reduction. So how should we examine the role of novel tobacco and nicotine products in harm reduction? We should examine the role from, in my view, from three different angles: the science, the market, and the regulatory angles. These different perspectives will help form our opinion about if and how harm reduction can help tobacco control. Harm reduction has a role, in my view, in tobacco control if the evidence indicates that the product that is suggested for harm reduction is of lower risk than combustible tobacco and can substitute for it massively without significant unwanted effects. And if the market and the regulation both push in the same sense to phase out the combustible products and promote lower risk, true lower risk nicotine products. During the next 15 minutes, I will try to present a summary of the arguments on both sides of this debate, to the best of my abilities. I will not say who, in my opinion, is right or wrong. That is not my place, but only to present a map of the points that needed to be discussed to show the complexity of the process about deciding on harm reduction. However, before reviewing the arguments in science, market, and regulation issues, let us explain a little bit about what harm reduction is. It is a respected public health strategy for managing addictive or otherwise persistent behaviors that pose severe health risks. This is not something new. Harm reduction has not been created by the tobacco industry, although it may have profited from some views about that. It entails substituting one lower risk behavior for another that is high risk. And there's kind of two groups of harm reduction strategies, depending on whether the behavior that we are trying to promote as lower risk is aided or not by a specific product that is available in the market, sold in the market. As for the products, the strategies that are product aided, we should consider basically whether the product is a drug or not, the product that is harm producing, and if it's available by prescription or not. And this is a little bit of a classification we see here in this table of the different strategies depending on how they fare in this table. Now, the novelty about tobacco harm reduction is that for the first time, the use of a drug, which is nicotine, through the different mechanisms that they deliver, is proposed to be obtained without a prescription, as a consumer, regulated as a consumer product. And second, that the producer of the harm reduction product is the same as the producer of the harmful product. Well, what is the place of harm reduction in tobacco control? How it is related to the end game? Let's remember that in tobacco control, we implement preventive, cessation, and protective policies to reduce the prevalence of tobacco use and exposure to tobacco smoke, with the ultimate goal of reducing disease and premature death from tobacco use. So what does the harm reduction fit? In order to reduce prevalence, there can be different priorities in terms of the objectives. The immediate objective can be eliminating combustible products, eliminating smoking, because these are the most harmful tobacco products. We can think that we have to anyway eliminate the whole tobacco use, or in the end, whether we need to ultimately eliminate nicotine use too. Harm reduction is about expediting the reduction of tobacco attributable disease by actively promoting the switching of smoking to the use of a non-combustible tobacco or nicotine product. In addition, and this is important, in addition to implementing preventive cessation and protection policies. Let us examine the harm reduction issues related to science, market, and regulation. And there are three types of products presented as harm reduction alternatives presently. One is snus, the other are electronic cigarettes, and the third one is the heated tobacco products. During my presentation, I will be mostly referring to electronic cigarettes because at least in the areas we live, snus in the European Union, snus is not allowed or not very common, although it is in Sweden. And the evidence about heated tobacco products is quite slim at this point. So, of scientific interest is the potential transition effects of harm reduction products in terms of how they transition people from one state to another. I'll explain in a few seconds. There are three transitions that are of interest to public health. In this graph, we can divide the population between non-smokers and smokers. And one potential transition, in this case negative for public health, would be if the product helps move non-smokers into smoking. The second is rather a positive one, if the product helps move smokers out of smoking into the world of non-smokers or former smokers. And the third, obviously, is related to if the product moves, in this case negatively, from a healthy status, whether you're a non-smoker or a smoker using this product, if it helps you move in from a healthy status to an unhealthy one. Let's start with the first transitional effect, or rather this last transitional effect is the degree of risk reduction. And the evidence shows that compared to non-smoking, these products increase the risk, that the risk reduction is zero. And I don't think nobody disagrees with that. However, it is a little bit more contentious when you compare the effect of smoking conventional cigarettes, and there is a debate. Although I think we all agree that the long-term effect on morbidity and mortality have not been sufficiently studied, specifically in the case of electronic cigarettes, mostly based on the number of toxicants emitted and the level of those emitted. You have basically two positions in the debate. One that says that switching entirely from combustible tobacco to electronic cigarettes, and for that purpose also to any other harm reduction product, is likely to reduce the risk, but that the reduction cannot be quantified at this point. The other position, as also very well known, is that this reduction is about 95%, which is interpreted as saying that these products are 20 times less harmful than conventional cigarettes. Now, about the second element of transition here, the degree of switching from away from smoking. Again, there's a debate here. For example, WHO says that sometimes of e-cigarettes help some smokers quit under certain circumstances, but evidence is insufficient to issue a blanket recommendation to use any type of electronic cigarette as a cessation aid for all smokers, while on the other side you have, for example, the conclusions of the recent Cochrane review, which says basically if 6 people in 100 quit using nicotine replacement therapy, that means pharmaceutical nicotine, 10 people in 100 would quit by using electronic cigarettes containing nicotine. So you see there's, again, a difference here in the interpretation of the evidence. Finally, what about the degree to which the use of harm reduction products may switch non-smokers into nicotine dependence and ultimately into smoking? I think the evidence shows that the electronic cigarettes use are associated with increases with the risk of ever using combustible tobacco cigarettes among never smoking youth. However, the debate is about what explains this association. On the one hand, you have some think that electronic cigarettes use non-smokers is a gateway into nicotine dependence and ultimately smoking. And that's what we call the normalization hypothesis. They say the similarities between electronic cigarette use and smoking facilitate the transition from one product to the other. Well, on the other side, you have people that say that e-cigarette use and smoking are initiated independently because of a common propensity risk behavior that underlies their character or their behavior. And this is the common liability hypothesis. Let us talk now a little bit about why we should consider the role of the market and the nicotine industry in this market as an essential factor in deciding what might be the contribution of harm reduction to tobacco control. The nicotine, the argument or the reasoning is as follows. The nicotine industry, including the tobacco companies, have a role in harm reduction because the immediate objective is to reduce harm to the greatest extent and as quickly as possible. For that, the best approach is that to have new products that can compete with cigarettes in the marketplace, so smokers willingly switch to the new products, and that can only be achieved in a free market, which would allow for the necessary innovation. And obviously that means that someone has to produce and market these products, and that is part of the nicotine industry, including big tobacco, that obviously is very interested in that. Now, the question is the industry committed to phasing out cigarettes? And you have basically questions and opposing arguments in both sides. On the one side, you have a question, is the harm reduction strategy a marketing ploy? And you have tobacco control advocates that says harm reduction is co-opted by the tobacco industry with the purpose of securing reputational benefits via an emerging corporate social responsibility agenda and creating opportunities to establish dialogue with and access to policymakers, scientists, and public health groups. On the other side, imagine a conversation with some tobacco executive. They will say, no, it's not a ploy. Harm reduction is a business strategy to transform the industry in response to a customer demand for an attractive alternative product that offer consumers most of the sensory benefits of cigarette use with a small fraction of the risk. And yes, developing, selling products that can make a contribution to public health is a major motivational factor. And then you have the other side saying, well, harm reduction is expanding nicotine sales to new users. It's a complement rather than alternative to be used when you cannot smoke or to be used more permanently. And I see the executive from the tobacco industry saying, well, harm reduction products are a response to changes in consumer preferences, not just a new niche. Consumers, not the industry, have created a giant ecosystem of social media, vape stores, advocates, pundits, reviewers, and experts owning the message and teaching each other. We as an industry cannot act against the consumer interest, or they'll take their revenge at the marketplace. And I see the other side saying, yeah, but if the industry really is committed to reduce harm to its customer, stop selling cigarettes, or at least set a date for phasing out them, and attacking effective tobacco control policies. And the other side saying, we want to obsolete the cigarette, but in order to be effective, this transformation cannot be, this obsolete cigarette cannot be done by regulation. It has to be done by presenting a better product, having something better. Therefore, the transformation to a harm reduction business will require some time, and we do not control the rate of transition. Success of the harm reduction strategy requires, that's the industry speaking, the viability of the industry. It requires the cash flows for combustible cigarette business. This means that for a while, we will remain committed to a conventional cigarette business. And by the way, we also will continue to resist certain regulatory initiatives, not because we are immoral, but because those initiatives are ineffectual or disproportionate, such as plain packaging or the sudden and steep tax increases. So that's how I imagine such a conversation could go, to the best of my abilities, obviously. We consider the last point about regulation, and regulating an individual harm reduction product is about assessing risks and benefits for the net health impact on the population overall, considering effects on both users and non-users. The purpose of such an assessment would be to favor the transition that are positive and stop the transitions that I was mentioning before that are not favorable to public health, such as stop, sorry, such as stopping non-smokers into becoming smokers, or stopping or regulating the toxicity of the products. In summary, is to maximize positive transitional effects and minimize negative ones. Now, we have to also take into account that regulating in harm reduction, it's not only about regulating one product, or one harm reduction product, it's also about regulating the use of all products involved in the equation of harm. And we tend to forget, for example, that if you are concerned, as we are, about harm reduction products moving youth into smoking, we, in addition to regulating the product, electronic cigarettes or whatever it is, we should have in place already high tobacco taxes, strong smoke-free laws, plain packaging, a ban on cigarette additives, etc., etc. Regulating harm reduction products is also about societal values. If people smoke for the nicotine, but die from the terror, in a very well-known statement, the harm reduction strategy requires promoting the use of products at the lower end of the nicotine risk continuum. Here you have the risk continuum on the right. The maximum risk is from cigarettes. The minimum is from nicotine replacement therapy, regulated as a pharmaceutical. To do so, we have to respond to some questions that have an importance in terms of values. couple of questions that occurred to me is, first, how comfortable are we with the long-term and permanent use of less harmful nicotine delivery mechanisms by adults if they help keep currently addicted smokers from relapsing to combustible tobacco products? That is, how comfortable we are of moving people out of tobacco but keeping them addicted to nicotine. Or, for example, another question is, given the potential health impact of dual use of tobacco, how long of a dual use period is acceptable before transitioning to less harmful nicotine-containing product? Are we gonna think that a transition period of 10 years is fine, or 5 years, or 1 year, or a few months before declaring that this is an acceptable transition period for these products? Finally, I want to also bring some regulatory issues that are of practical nature. How do you regulate harm reduction products when, depending on your enforcement capacity, how do you do with governments that have very little enforcement capacity or very little surveillance and evaluation capacity to react quickly to changes in harm produced by your own regulation? And finally, an important issue too that is dealing with uncertainty. We want to have an evidence-based policy and regulatory process, but generated evidence takes time, and in the end, it's never everything we want. So what level of uncertainty do we tolerate? What is the threshold to apply the precautionary principle that says that introduction of a new product or process whose ultimate effects are disputed or are none should be resisted? We have to add some criteria. For example, the European Union, when it deals with the precautionary principle, they require that the measures should be proportional to the chosen level of protection, that it should be non-discriminatory in their application, meaning different products should be applied the same level of the precautionary principle, or it should be consistent with measures already taken. The same, if you in the past have not applied the precautionary principle for one product, why apply it for another one this time? And most importantly, it should be based on an examination of the potential benefits and cost of action and lack of action. These, in my view, are the three elements that we should take into account when discussing about harm reduction. Going back to the invitation to be honest and not ignoring the so-called third way, a full consideration of the contribution of new tobacco and nicotine products to harm reduction will require weighing in three types of data. Certainly, data from the scientific evidence about the impact of these products in positive and negative transition effects, but also data on how the market forces will sway the product mix in the marketplace, taking into account both the combustible and non-combustible elements. And finally, data about the regulatory impact specific to each context. So a country may take a different decision based precisely on their own regulatory capacity, as I explained recently. Well, thank you very much. And you have a question, you can write me into this email, and you can see in the EDBEL website more of our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Armando, for this excellent and really thought-provoking presentation and for very good questions posed. So tobacco harm reduction is, on one hand, a very pragmatic approach, so with the idea behind it to help smokers that cannot or unwilling to stop smoking to switch using nicotine in a less harmful form, after which, ideally, they would nicotine use altogether. But on the other hand, one of the reasons harm reduction is a sensitive topic that it could involve engaging with the tobacco industry, which has a huge history of manipulation, public debate, and public health policies. So to fully understand the harmfulness of potential risk products and their effectiveness for smoking cessation, what we need is independent research and also carefully scrutinize tobacco industry investments in the research they are doing on this topic. So as we know for the fact that a number of scientists leading the debate on harm reduction are actually funded by the tobacco industry. So thank you once again, Armando, and we have now time for questions and answers, and we know there were some questions for you, and I'm happy to ask my co-chair, Christina, to lead this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We are going to ask to our panelists to be here to turn on their camera in order to have like some kind of discussion. There are some questions in that our audience has sent us to the YouTube channel, and we thank them, but there are some questions that will be answered in the second table because they belong better to there. But we have some questions that now can be answered maybe by Armando. There have been many participants who have asked whether, for example, is the problem about the nicotine or is the problem about the tar, as you have said. And it's not the harm reduction that is a strategy that it's one of the options to end the epidemic of tobacco. Should we think about the ending of the tobacco epidemic by introducing harm reduction, by reducing the amount of nicotine or the amount of tar, or we can think about harm reduction by reducing the number of people who is suffering from the harmful consequence of tobacco use. So this is one of the questions of our audience. So what do you think is the approach, reducing the amount of substances or reducing the amount of diseases?
Well, the harm reduction as tobacco control has, in the end, the purpose of reducing the harm that tobacco produces. So in practice, it means that hopefully the phasing out of the most harmful products, specifically the cigarette, and allowing for a continued dependence on nicotine if the product is of lower harm, truly of lower harm. There's a lot of debate about whether these products are truly of lower harm. Now, if I understand well about the products, there's, as you can see, there's different types of there's basically only one product that is presently, because of the prevalence and of harm, that is what we are targeting in terms of reducing cigarette smoking, mostly in this part of the world, which is not necessarily true in every world, while trying to produce in the market different types of products. There's a reason for that while and this is part of the reason, if the industry has to be part of the solution, that's what they say, the competition in cigarettes it's only about brand, it's not about different products, while the competition in harm reduction products is about the products itself in variety, and that's why the industry is trying to produce as much in order to compete and gain that market, is trying to produce as many as different types of products they can. Obviously, I'm just describing the situation. I'm not indicating what is the best solution. I'm just trying to, along in this presentation, to present the different topics that need to be discussed. And for that purpose, I presented a very quick summary of these points. I don't know if I responded to this question or not.
I think it's a important debate what we have that you have raised, and it's a very hot topic. I mean, talking about harm reduction in tobacco consumption, and there were like there are people who are against, there are people who are in favor. So this is a huge debate that needs to be addressed. Of course, your presentation has started to have a lot of comments on our YouTube channel. It's impossible that you answer all of them, but we will send you these comments to you, Armando, in order that you know the comments of the audience. We are a bit behind in our schedule. In fact, we were supposed to start our break at 4:25, and then we are a bit behind. But if we have any other burning question, Lisa, we can throw it to our panelists, and then we will start the break because we are behind our schedule. As you remember, in our schedule, we have like a 20 minutes break, and it's supposed that we start again at 4:40, but maybe we can start a bit later, 4:45. So I don't know, Lisa, if we have any burning question from our audience.
I think maybe we can ask one more question. It's actually came from the Catalan Institute of Oncology. So can you, Armando, comment about Philip Morris' strategy to confound the public presenting their heated tobacco products as a product of risk reduction instead of product of decreased exposure, as certainly approved by US FDA? Thank you.
Certainly. As I said during my presentation, I was mostly relying on examples from electronic cigarettes because, for one reason, because I was not speaking about snus, which is very common in Sweden, because in the rest of the European Union, it's not very common. And I was not talking about heated tobacco products because I think the evidence about any effect on these transitions that I was explaining is very, very slim. What I'm worried about the heated tobacco products is, and I think we, several colleagues have been discussing this for a while, is that even I think we published something with Esteve in one of the journals here in Spain, is that we are concerned that Philip Morris is basically taking the decision of the FDA to allow its marketing in the United States as a product that produces a level of toxicity that is a number of toxicant and level of toxicant that is smaller than cigarettes, and taking it beyond to indicate that this means that they are less harmful. They might be, I don't know. The problem is that there's no research at all in this area, and whatever Philip Morris presented to the FDA led to the FDA to conclude that they could not reach that conclusion. So the FDA have three kind of levels of approval of a product to be marketed. And again, by approval, I mean simply approval for marketing, not an approval of the properties, is that it can be a normal product with any claims, a product in which you can say that you have a reduced exposure to the level because they produce a number of toxicants and level of toxicant which is less than in cigarettes. And then whether this also translates into a modified risk or harm reduction itself, meaning that these small smaller amount of toxicants will have an effect on reduced disease or mortality, which cannot be said at this point. And this is well understood if we take an example with a product that not a tobacco product, any product that produces, for example, a 1 kilogram of cyanide while using, and you have another product that produces 1,000 times less than this, and it produces 1 gram. Now, both products, and one is of reduced exposure, but it's not reduced risk, because both products, even with 1 gram of cyanide, will kill you. In order to be also of reduced risk, it will have to demonstrate that taking the amount of cyanide that is produced by this product will not kill you. And this is what is not demonstrated with heated tobacco products. Again, I'm not saying that they, in the end, might not be a harm reduction product, but what I'm saying is that there's no evidence, and Philip Morris has not produced the evidence in that sense.
Thank you so much, Armando. And just to remind the position of WHO that our guidance states that of tobacco use are harmful, and 182 countries globally agreed that heated tobacco products are tobacco products and should be regulated as such. So thank you so much. Christina?
Silvano wants, Silvano is anxious because he wants to say something. So go ahead, and we are going to, after your comment, we are going to start our break, because probably the audience is waiting to, to grab a coffee or to take a tea and then resume the session, not at 4:45, at 4:50, because we are a bit behind. Go ahead.
Now, I wanted to congratulate Armando for his clear presentation, and also for this attempt to be objective and not to give an idea, let's say, or but I must confess that I know a number of tobacco control experts, and I never met one tobacco control expert really independent, without a conflict of interest, endorsing ICOs. Never. Thus, in my opinion, this is not harm reduction. Harm reduction, in my opinion, is nicotine replacement therapy. That is harm reduction because it is provided to smokers, whereas these products, these alternative products, are not provided only to smokers, but to the whole population. In here, the main problem is that young people are attracted by these novel products, also electronic cigarettes. And for example, in Italy, we observed that among electronic cigarette users, there were more people starting smoking traditional cigarettes as a consequence of their use, rather than those quitting smoking as a consequence of their electronic cigarette use. So this is the point. This is not a tool. A tool would be, for example, the nicotine replacement therapy, which is provided to smokers, to heavy smokers that are not able to quit. That is a harm reduction tool. This is an additional tool that will keep the people with this addiction, or the addiction to nicotine.
Yes, Silvano. Probably is the communication strategies the industry is using are more powerful. Is more powerful that we are using. So they have conveyed this. They have conveyed these messages to us as saying that this harm reduction, and we have believed the message. Very well. So I want to finish this session giving to Sheila the opportunity to say something if she wants, 1 minute, and then we will start the break. If you want to say something.
It's mute the mic.
Thank you. It was a battery warning. If people could get completely off tobacco onto e-cigarettes, we would welcome that, but the picture at population level is not yet clear. I think we need to keep going with a mixed picture of regulatory and other measures and not give too prominent a place to e-cigarettes and seek proper whole population level harm reduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have had, Lisa, 3 very nice presentations from our outstanding panelists. And now we are going to start the break. We are going to have only 10 minutes break. So Esteba, we resume the session at 4:50, isn't it?
It's perfect. See you in 15 minutes.
Okay, see you in 10 minutes.
Okay,
Thank you so
yes.
much, everyone.
10, 15
Thank you.
minutes.
Okay.
Esteve.
Yes.
¿Me oyes mejor ahí?
No, no demasiado bien.
Ay,
¿No has podido cambiar esto?
No.
Vaya.
A ver. Aquí me oyes mejor. Ok, perfecto. Entonces dejo ahí, no le muevo más. Ok, gracias. Estamos aquí.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Hello again.
Okay, I think that we can start the session.
Yes, please, Angela.
Thank you all. First of all, we have a short break and now we are back, all of us. The second session is focused on the impact of the COVID in the tobacco control. And we have with us 4 panelists that will share with us their national experience in this field. And I'll start to introduce the first 2 panelists and I'll pass to Esteve. First, I will start with the Monica Perez Rivas. Monica graduated from the master's and doctoral programs at the Department of the Preventive Medicine and Public Health University of Santiago de Compostela. She developed her career at the epidemiology unit of the Galician Directorate for Public Health. There, she was involved in the Galician Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, where her principal area of interest was tobacco consumption and exposure to environmental tobacco smoke, with special interest of the impact of the laws on smoking approved in Spain in 2005 and 2010. Currently, she is an assistant professor in epidemiology and public health, with tobacco control her main focus of the research. She is the coordinator of the tobacco working group at the Spanish Society of the Epidemiology. Another panelist is Giuseppe Gorini. Giuseppe has a medical background and specialization in public health and biostatistics. He was qualified as associate professor of public health in 2012 and has been working in the field of the epidemiology and public health since 1998. He was a recipient of many grants from the European Commission for conducting studies on the secondhand smoke exposure in Europe, and many grants from the Italian Ministry of Health, Tuscany, Emilia-Romagna, and other regions in Italy, conducting tobacco control studies. Dr. Gorini's research is documented by the publication of the more than 160 articles. Esteve, can you introduce the other panelists?
Thank you very much, Angela. It's a pleasure to share this table with you and also introduce our colleagues, Luzmiri and Reynales. Dr. Reynales but connected from Mexico, from Cuernavaca. She's a physician. She trained in Colombia and has a Master of Science and a doctorate in epidemiology. And now she's working at the Mexican National Institute of Public Health. Since 2005, she has the director of the Tobacco Research Department at the National School of Public Health, trying to generate research to inform changes in tobacco control policies and also applied practice in her country, in Mexico. Mexico ratified the FCTC in 2004, and they have been working a lot to achieve objectives. So she has been involved in national and also in international projects to adopt, implement, and evaluate the FCTC. She has also led a wide variety of tobacco research projects to support the adoption and implementation of tobacco cessation treatment in Mexico. And also, she is trying to incorporate new technology telehealth or mHealth to achieve these objectives. It is a pleasure to have in your early morning from Mexico with us in this session. I also want to introduce Dr. Jose Precioso from Portugal. Jose is a professor and researcher at the University. Hi, Jose, at the University of Minho. After his master thesis and doctorate, was devoted to the prevention and smoking control. He has been involved in several research projects, both at the national in Portugal and also international level. We have shared some common European projects with them. He has done a lot of effort to disseminate tobacco control and smoking prevention, both in Portugal and in international forums, and has also, and he is one of the people in Portugal more active in promoting training to health professionals to be able to provide smoking cessation support to those smokers who want to quit. Thank you very much also, Jose, for joining us for this debate or colloquium that we will have in the link between topic and finally, he has joined now. It is my pleasure also to introduce another very good colleague, Professor Mark Willemsen, who is the scientific director of the Netherlands Expertise Center for Tobacco Control, directing the Trimble Institute in Netherlands devoted to tobacco control research. He holds a professorship in tobacco control research at Maastricht University in the Department of Health Promotion. Besides his master in psychology, he did a doctorate in public health. Mark is author or hundreds of papers derived from dozens of investigations, including reduction, genetic aspects of addiction and of smoking, cessation method, intervention in specific group of population, and the implementation and the evaluation of the implementation of tobacco control policies. He also written and we are very happy also to have Mark with us. These 5 tobacco control experts to try to debate and to answer some of the questions that we'll be introducing and questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Angela?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we'll organize this session in form of the colloquium, and we'll start with the question, that the same question that was addressed by one of our participants that following us through the YouTube and address this question. The question is the following. It's practically that during the COVID time, we have seen some countries that are strengthening tobacco control measures to protect their public health and to reduce associated adverse effects of the COVID disease and outcomes. And for examples, in the Malta, they banned the outside smoking in the dining areas during the summer this year. Other countries, for example, 15 of the Eastern Mediterranean countries, they also banned the use of the hookah in indoor and outside place. And many other countries, for example, Russian Federation, they already adopted the increase of the excise tobacco taxation by 20% compared with the previous year, and many other countries. And I want to address to you what kind of, just to briefly explain, what tobacco control measures in your country that have been put in place during the COVID time. And I'll start with Monica, because I know that Spain has one of the good examples and can show it. Monica, floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Angela, for your presentation, and only one short sentence. For me, it's a great pleasure, and also it's a great pressure to be here with you today. And a special thanks to Esteve and Cristina for this kind invitation. Yes, as Angela pointed out, during this pandemic, we have seen in our country how governments, not only government, increased tobacco control measures to protect public health, trying to reduce the associated adverse COVID-19 disease outcomes. Only a brief explanation about the territorial division in Spain is important, since it will help us to understand how measures arrive here. Spain is divided in 17 regions and 2 regional cities, Ceuta and Melilla. All of them have autonomous governments can act on their own, applying specific regulations. So in Spain, on August the 12th, Galicia, that is a northwestern region best known for the Camino de Santiago, pioneered the ban on smoking or electronic cigarette consumption in the public spaces or open air areas. And smokers were forbidden to smoke in public if it was not possible to maintain a distance of 2 meters between people, in what is believed to be the first such restriction in Europe associated to the pandemic. Galicia's smoking ban was announced in a news conference on August the 12th after experts recommended the measure to the regional government. But this novel measure was soon, I think, embraced by other regions, such, for example, the Canary Islands. And 2 days later, the national government banned smoking on outdoors public places if 2 meters distance could not be respected. But after August the 13th, in Galicia and also in Spain, people were smoking in the terraces of cafes, bars, or restaurants, but nobody was breaking the rules. The reason was very simple, and this is a contradiction, because in theory, tables in the bars and restaurants were placed safe distance apart, meaning no rules were being broken if a cigarette is smoked. So, to the best of my knowledge, today's regulations on tobacco related to COVID-19 pandemic are the same across Spain. 2 exceptions, 2 brave exceptions, Canary Islands and the Balearic Islands, where smoking is banned outside. So in these places, in public places, it's completely prohibited, but some signals say that they are changing their minds towards the relaxation of the rules. I would have preferred to have been simpler in my explanation and have said that Spain banned smoking in public places, no exception, but unfortunately, this is not the situation. Some progress was done, but more and simpler regulation is necessary here in Spain.
Thank you, Monica. I want also to address the same question to Miriam, and I know that Brazil received the World No Tobacco Day in 2020, and but did they implement some stronger measures during the pandemic?
Well, thank you, Angela, for the presentation, Esteve, for the invitation, and colleagues. It's great to be here. Let me share the situation in Mexico is like this that Monica explained in Spain. We are a federal country with a federal government, with 32 state-level governments, and they are in charge of the implementation of the federal legislation for tobacco control. Particularly in Mexico, during the beginning of the pandemic, the manufacturing of tobacco was declared as non-essential activity. At the beginning, during the lockdown, the factory was closed for tobacco and alcohol. The other thing is quite important is it was at the very beginning, but then the government started a big promotion and prevention strategy for COVID that include all the risk factors, include tobacco prevention. They implement some strategies that are daily press conference information, presenting the indicator related to the COVID pandemic, and there is an opportunity also to talk about how to prevent the risk factors. We have chance to present the industry. Yes.
Miriam, I just want to say the connection is very bad and we really don't hear you quite well. Can you somehow regulate? And I will pass the same questions to Giuseppe now, and you may continue later. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, sorry for Miriam, but it's difficult to understand. Thank you for the invitation. I'd like to speak of another aspect of tobacco control in Italy, in the sense that for us, this pandemic was an occasion to put in place the problem of taxation of heated tobacco products in Italy, because as you know, the only factory of ICOs, of Philip Morris ICOs, is in Italy for all, for worldwide, for Japan, Italy, and so on. We have a factory with more than 1,000 people, and a lot of and since the beginning of the introduction of ICOs, there was a reduction in taxation of this product, of heated tobacco products, not only the Philip Morris product, but all the heated tobacco products. The reduction was of about 75% of taxation. The cost for people was the same as the traditional cigarettes, so for instance, €5, but the earnings for the tobacco industry are higher. Now, because of the pandemic and the crisis, the economic crisis due to the pandemic, politicians began to think about to reduce this gain for the tobacco industry in order to put the taxation for heated tobacco products at the same level of traditional cigarettes. So now, in the new financial law that is now in discussion in the parliament in Italy, there are about 18 amendments from some parties in order to reduce this low taxation, in order to put the same level of taxation of our tobacco products. This was for us an occasion in order to discuss about it, because up to now, the problem, the politicians decided to reduce some years ago the taxation because the alleged harm reduction, and without any scientific proof about it, as already mentioned Armando Peruga before in the preceding session. So now there is a discussion about it because the government needs money because for the crisis. And so this particular gain for tobacco industry, because if the price for the people is the same as the other products, the reduction in taxation is more earning only for tobacco industry and not for the government. So I hope that now there are these about 18 amendments. They put the reduction not at a 75% level, but at a 20% reduction. So the reduction, unfortunately, still remains, but it's not so so big. Another thing I want, so it was a good occasion because of this problem of heated tobacco products in Italy still up to now didn't was not so appealing to the public or to the politicians or journalists, but after the pandemic they began to discuss about it. Another thing I want to mention regarding the same regulation you mentioned about Spain, in Italy there was a regulation for the city of Milan that the government of the city decided to put from January 2021 to have outdoor places free from smoke. Outdoor means not allowed to smoke in parks, bus stops, sports areas, cemetery, but they say that the regulation says that people can smoke in isolated places. That means 10 meters from other people. But anyway, they have to implement this regulation. I think that there will be some problems in compliance because it's difficult to put such a measure. But anyway, the municipality of Milan tried to do something similar.
Yeah,
similar to Spain.
Thank you, Giuseppe. I know that Milano goes quite ahead and have quite strong tobacco smoking regulation, and especially on their second smoke regulation. And I really want to ask our panelists to be more concise and want to address also the same questions to José from Portugal. José, it's your floor. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, excuse me. Are you hear me? Are you hear me now? Yes, okay. Good afternoon again. First of all, thank you, Steve and Christina, for the invitation to participate in this important symposium. I also want to greet the symposium colleagues and the public. In the case of Portugal, no specific smoking control measures were taken during this period until the moment. Yes, the focus was on controlling the widespread of the epidemic, infection, and on treating the infected one, and almost everything else most stopped. Even an interesting experience that we have in Azores, in the Isles of Portugal, which consists in the implementation of a smoking prevention program called Domicílio Sem Fumo, which means smoke-free homes and cars, stopped because the professionals are in the field were allocated to the treatment of COVID. However, the General Directorate of Health, disseminated in May of this year banners alerting to the specific dangers of smoking during the COVID-19 pandemics, widespreading message as the gesture of putting the cigarette on the mouth increase the risk of getting COVID, or smoking reduces immunity and favors lung infections, and also motivating for smoking cessation during this period. Take it into consideration the worst prognosis, like Silvano has said, for smokers to get COVID-19 compared to no smokers. And it's in Portugal, it's all that we have make national level against tobacco in this period.
Thank you, Jose. And I want to ask Mark, that just recently joined our session as a panelist. Mark, are you here with us? Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
it's great. Thank you for changing the session.
Yes.
Did you hear? Should I repeat the question, or you already know it?
Yes, if you could repeat it, that would be wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, we just asked our panelists to share with us experience regarding the what tobacco control measures that your country have put in place during the COVID time, if there is anything specifically. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Well, as far as the Netherlands is concerned, we are, I think, in a good position at the moment. In 2017, we had a national prevention accord. So the government decided that they have a challenge to get to 5% smokers in 2040. So currently we are at around 22% smokers. So we have a long way to go, but at least they have an end goal for 2040. So that is good. But not only an end goal, but also they have a number of policy measures in place. And they started doing that previous year, also this year, and also next year to come. And they continue to do so despite COVID-19, despite the corona crisis. So there's now this year, for the first time since many years in the Netherlands, we have a mass media campaign, which actually is targeting smokers and saying to smokers, it is a good time now to quit smoking. So we have that in place. The government is paying for it. And we at Trimbos Institute, we are the expert center on tobacco control in the Netherlands. We also support that, and we try to get health professionals in the Netherlands to contribute and also to refer their smokers to smoking cessation counseling. In general, in the Netherlands, there's a broad support for tobacco control at the moment. There's a smoke-free generation movement, which is very broadly brought in the Netherlands. A lot of organizations are behind it and supporting it, and supporting the government as well. And also in terms of policy measures, there's now since a few weeks actually, the government has set up a sort of a route towards a restriction on tobacco selling points to specialty shops. So now you can buy cigarettes in supermarkets and tank stations everywhere. But the government is saying, well, in 2030, we will have the situation that tobacco can only be sold in specialty shops and not in supermarkets anymore, not in gas stations anymore. So this is something that's very important for us, that we have some kind of thing that we can look forward to, and the government is trying to get there. So in 2022, we will have a ban on vending machines. In 2023, a ban on the online sale of tobacco. And in 2024 on the supermarkets. So that will be, I think, very important. And they, like I said, they are going to go forward with this despite the corona crisis, because they know also that more smokers are now saying that, well, they really want to quit smoking because of fear, because they are afraid for corona and COVID-19 hitting hard on them and making it more, making the consequences of being ill even worse. So there's some more, extra motivation for the government to step up here. So I think in the Netherlands, the situation is quite good at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Congratulations, really. And you will be just already one of the examples for other countries to show up and also to follow. And I want to address other questions, and this also linked with implementation of Article 5.3 of the WFCTC, because practically during the pandemic that put a lot of pressure on the national health system, and the health system was struggling with the lack of resources, limited supplies, medical equipment, and so on. And many local and international companies try to provide support, donations, and so on. And tobacco industry, there was not an exception. And many countries reported the donation from the tobacco industry and also interference, because they donate, but also ask something instead of this, like to do the favor. And did you experience in your country some advantages from tobacco industry? And would you share some your experience and let us know what actions were taken in this regard by the government or NGOs or any other stakeholders? And we can start with Mark. We can start with you.
Okay, well, it's good. I have my microphone still open. Well, the Netherlands have really no indications at the moment that the tobacco industry is really taking it. I know in abroad, we have a lot of examples that the industry is taking advantage as a part of showing itself as a good, supportive, part of the solution and not part of the problem, sort of type of organization. But in the Netherlands, if you look at Article 5.3, actually we did look at this more specifically, and we did a tobacco industry interference index. So maybe you are all aware that just some time ago there was a launch of the tobacco industry interference index globally, and at the Trendles Institute, where I also work, we collected the data for the Netherlands. So the Netherlands ranked 8 at the global tobacco industry interference index after the UK and France. So we had actually 39 points, so which is actually quite good, making the case for showing that actually in the Netherlands, the government is actually quite well abiding to the 5.3 rules. So when drafting the tobacco control agreements, the tobacco industry was not allowed to sit on the table. So that was important. So only the health organizations together with the government decided on the best way to get to our 5% smokers in 2040 without any interference of the tobacco industry. There was one thing going on at the moment, that we now have a new lockdown in the Netherlands due to Corona. We have a new lockdown. It started just Monday this week. And now it is the question of which shops are open still for the public. And we know in a lot of tobacco shops in the Netherlands, they are also open because people can get parcels, and so they have also a service of postal service, if you like. But they also sell tobacco. So they're now trying to lobby for the government that they are some kind of essential shop, because they have the parcel, but also because they sell tobacco, and tobacco is, some kind of essential things that people need. And they say, well, we should be able to sell tobacco, because if we can't sell tobacco, they just go to the supermarket, and then people have to go somewhere else. That's also taking a risk. So they're trying to get that, and I think it is quite ridiculous that that tobacco is maybe considered as an essential product. So I don't think that they will succeed, but even that they do try to do that.
Thank you, Mark. It's in many countries, tobacco industry try to claim that tobacco is essential products and try to keep open these boutiques and kiosks and all others shops that are selling tobacco. Okay, I'll try to move now to check with Miriam. Miriam, how is your connection?
Can you hear me better? Oh, thank you. Sorry. Okay, let me share a second question in Mexico related to the tobacco industry interference. Specifically, they are promoting the new products and the heated tobacco products, despite in Mexico is forbidden all of this kind of product here. However, we are working with the federal government, working with them in terms to implement the Article 5.3. There is a code of ethics that we need to sign, especially the government of the Ministry of Health and the intersectoral committee are ruled out by this kind of code of ethics. However, we are a federal government, and we have a state level governments, and we have the headquarters of the tobacco industry here, one in the north. This is the BAT, The British American Tobacco is located in Nuevo León, and also the PMI is located in Guadalajara. And they are using the government and the state level in order to promote the social responsibility actions, and they invest at the local level in Guadalajara, in Jalisco, with the hospital level and deliver the hospital care. However, as Mark mentioned, the civil society are very organized here, and we are working with the Tobacco Interference Index. We have released in September expanded report presented the tobacco interference during COVID pandemic, explaining all the strategy that they are promoting. This strategy is also belongs to the global tobacco interference monitoring at global level. So we are monitoring, surveillance the tobacco activities, and we are working with the government at national and also local level in order to prevent this interference in tobacco control activities.
Thank you, Miriam, and it's great to hear. And now we'll go to Giuseppe, because I know that also you mentioned that the tobacco industry is widely promoting, especially these novel tobacco products, and they use the variety of ways to promote it, especially now during the COVID time and lockdown. They promote through the social media, they promote through any other channels, and push the people to pass or to try these novel tobacco products.
Yeah, you're right. In Italy, the problem is that the promotion of ICOs, of heated tobacco products, is possible not only is possible because they are promoting the device, not on the tobacco. Because I think worldwide, the ban of advertising is related to tobacco. Instead, they used to promote the device. For instance, in Italy, they used the fashion channel. You go to the best shops, fashion streets in Florence here or in other towns, you can find an ICO shop where beautiful people promote the device. So in Italy, there is another phenomenon, very ugly, I think, in my opinion, because they are promoting not only now, but even before the pandemic, at least from 2015 onwards, they are giving money, or they are giving some money for developing conferences, online conferences, or now no, but now only online conferences in Association of Physicians in Italy in order to promote their products. For instance, in Italy, we have a toxicology, the Italian Toxicologists Association, or the Italian Association of other clinicians. They are accustomed to receive money from the pharmaceutical industry in order to develop some congresses. So they accepted, and they didn't think that they are promoting also the product of Philip Morris. And they also even invited officials from Philip Morris in order to speak about their product. And they began in a naively way to promote tobacco, even without thinking that it's another form of tobacco. And physicians in Italy are not accustomed to speak about smoking cessation, or at least it's not so, they are not so expert in it. In the curricula in the university for health professionals, it's difficult in Italy to find a course on smoking cessation or on smoking harms. And so they usually don't speak about smoking cessation, but they began speaking about harm reduction. This is the situation in Italy now. But anyway, the Minister of Health 2 weeks ago wrote a formal letter to all associations of physicians in order to stop this phenomenon and to stop the funding of tobacco industry for congresses or for the Association of Physicians. It was a great things that they did, because they sent, the Minister of Health sent this formal letter to a lot of associations, and the Italian Association of Tobaccologists, I am within this association, began to widespread this letter in order to let our association know this formal letter to stop this sort of violation of 5.3 convention of the convention.
Yeah, thank you, Giuseppe. It's sad to hear that there's quite high interference, but at the same time, it's good that Ministry of Health take the lead and also inform all the partners and all the ministries about the Article 5.3 and what they have to do. And also to address the same question to Jose, how about the Portugal? Jose, please unmute yourself, we don't hear.
Excuse me, I forgot to put the microphone on. Yes, I think it's okay. Thank you. In Portugal, there is a great effort to promoting heated tobacco. I think it's a high problem between us. That yes, we do not have prevalence data, but the small jobs that I have made with my students show that many smokers are choosing the heated cigarettes. The electronic cigarette had no headization. In Portugal, is residual consumption, but this new way of smoking does. There are many people buy and smoking heated cigarettes. It is a new phenomenon between us, and one that we must be aware of. I don't know, but at the moment, I think it's the most pressure that the industry linked to tobacco is persuaded people to change smoking cigarettes and other forms of smoking to tobacco heated.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jose. Yeah, you're right. And usually the tobacco industry trying to make more favorable laws for these novel tobacco products. And just today, I received a notice from one of the country that over the night there was changed the law that was practically there was banning the advertisement of these novel tobacco products. They allow this, and this change was done over the night. And it's also sure that they also informed that due to the tobacco industry interference. Monica, I want to ask you about the Spain, how they implement Article 5.3 in Spain. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as I know, we have some interferences here, but I am not really sure about this issue. I'm not an expert in interferences, and maybe after Esteve can explain us better this topic, since he's working very hard in tobacco industry interferences, and I think that his explanation would be better than mine. Thank you.
Thank you. In this case, Esteve, please take a place.
Yes, I can add some more light, but well, Monica knows about this. But the thing is that We participated for the first time as Spain in the global tobacco interference index, and it has been today that the media has announced findings from the reporting. Spain has a bad position of Germany in the queue of countries in tobacco interference. We have several from, for example, agreements between some public universities, from police, for example. This is the case of the police accepting that Philip International paid for the tools needed for mapping in the borders. Also, some organizations can awards to journalists and directly sponsoring some activities from Philip Morris. The most recent, for example, a tobacco cessation course at the university sponsored by Philip Morris International. One of the topics was harm reduction. Just to show how the things are going in this country. That, however, we have a very good, tobacco policy, and we are in high positions in another scale, in the tobacco control scale that evaluates the tobacco control policies in Europe. So, in many cases, or the bodies depending on the government are not aware how the article in the FCC about the article. So when the police, the Guardia Civil, was asked about relationship with International, didn't know that this was big national. So,
thank you, Esteve. Can you continue also with the moderating the session?
Yeah, of course. In fact, going back to the previous table, we have seen, I believe that almost all of us and colleagues attending the symposium were small things linked to COVID. And we know the negatives of smoking with outcomes of COVID. Not only smoking is directly related to COVID, but indirectly because many diseases are linked to tobacco, and we know that people with chronic diseases have more severe COVID-19, worse prognosis, etc. So COVID and tobacco are coupled clearly. And many health authorities have around the globe have called smokers. In some countries, this has appeared as an opportunity. I wanted to screen up our call, whether you consider that the pandemic is a real opportunity tobacco use. How tobacco users give up their smoking habit during or taking into account the pandemic times? Is it possible or not? It's just something that it is said. What do you think? I wanted to pass this question to Monica.
Thank you. Thank you, Esteve. So, yes, I think that now it is the right time to encourage and to support the quitting of smoking. But it is important to stress out that during the lockdown, hospitals devoted the resources to fight COVID. And from the point of view of care, COVID was the only issue. So tobacco cessation groups here working within hospitals were eliminated. And as far as I know, no online cessation programs were implemented, for example, in Galicia. And I do not know if the solution is investing in modern solutions or if the solution is investing in one simple thing, that is communication. Interventions, I think, that should reach smokers with evidence-based information, and smokers should be reached with irrefutable health messages. And we have those messages. So we have evidence for example, from the US Surgeon General reports that shows that cigarette smoking can suppress the immune system. Cigarette smoking increases the risk of respiratory infections. So what else do we need? Health education, access to comprehensive cessation interventions, or free or low-cost pharmacotherapy, and again, health education. So developing clear public health messaging is mandatory. I think that countries should invest resources into modern solutions, but we have in our hands communication, and I think that communication is very, very important.
Thank you very much, Monica. I believe that you have written also important things on communication. So perhaps we will come back later. I wanted also to ask to Jose whether you believe that the pandemic is an opportunity or for the cessation in your country, in Portugal. How you have
okay. Okay. I agree with Monica. And excuse me. As you know, I work mainly on smoking prevention of consumption and exposure to smoker behavior. It's a new concept. It's not new, but actual concept. The importance in prevention is not only prevention exposition, but the exposure to smoking behavior. Investment in smoking cessation should come along this investment in prevention, considering this particular time where people may be more sensitive to health issues and have a closer knowledge about this infection, which has the similarity of being also a respiratory disease, we can expect that their attitude towards smoking may change into a wider awareness. This possibly increase in the will of people to change their smoking behavior should be motivated by campaigns in primary healthcare centers and hospitals about smoking cessation programs. It's like, I think it's the same like Monica has say. Of course, we know that at one moment this is not a priority for the healthcare service, but it should be targeted as an endeavor for medium-term actions, taking into account this window of opportunity to interventions that can be ever changed. To control the tobacco epidemic, this approach needs to be reinforced. School-based curriculum programs, school enrollment changes, parental involvement, and cessations programs, mass media campaigns, cigarette advertisements, and the price increases is very important, and it's possible. As regard the school-based curriculum, it's my area. Here in Portugal, we developed the program based on school-based curriculum. We call it Smokeout 1 and 2, which should now be broadcast in the country. The prevalence of school-age children at 50 years old is stable in Portugal. 12 boys and 10 girls, regular smoking, at least one cigarette a week. This is level we need brought down. In what concerns school environmental changes, it's already forbidden to smoke in schools. Now smoking has to be banned outside school. We are studying this phenomenon under the TRASH project. We are trying to involve parents. Actually, we are using children to convince parents not smoking. It was the program that we are putting in the schools. It was successful in preventing consumption at home, but not in quitting smoking. Is necessary to improve. This can be a yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You.
Okay.
I believe that. Well, I was to ask, how do you see this from the Americas and which is the experience in Mexico? Do you?
Yes. Thank you, Esteve. In the case, I'm completely agree with Monica that it's quite important the dissemination, the health promotion, using all the strategies for marketing health. However, in Mexico, we are promoting our call center. We have not a quit line, exactly quit line, but we have a call center in addictions, and the idea is to invest in them, and they are providing the brief counseling and the monitoring of the smokers during 12 weeks, and also to oriented to the smokers to the specialized clinics in case of they need to receive some pharmacological treatment of that. So I think it's quite important to visualize a comprehensive strategy, not only to enforce the public or population strategy, but also the individual strategy put together, and also deliver. In the case of Mexico, we need to include in our program the nicotine therapy replacement treatment for free. It's not free at this moment, and this is a quite challenge in Mexico in order to increase the quit rates in this moment. But definitely we are sure that we need to improve both a strategy, the platform strategy to monitoring, tracking the smokers, using the platform call centers, but we need to include and improve also the primary care level of attention in order to identify the smokers, detect it very early, and included in a cessation treatment here. This is our challenges now, and we are visualizing a new strategy with the government at federal and also at local level for the next year.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your contribution. Yeah. Moving to the end, we had several questions, but I wanted to ask, for example, to Mark. Well, for control, I believe that one of the reasons for here is because it was a challenging public health and topic for all of us. But the question now is whether tobacco control is a greater challenge than ever in these COVID-19 times. What do you think? Would health authorities, funding bodies, the public more seriously tobacco control because of the pandemic, or are we losing some opportunities? Mark?
Well, yes, thank you for this question. I think there's both challenges but also opportunities.
Microphone. Please, on the mic.
He's on, yes? Okay. I think there are both challenges but also opportunities. The challenges have to do with, well, actually we collected data in the Netherlands among a representative sample of smokers. We did that in May, in August and December. So we have 3 waves. The first one was right after the first lockdown and the last one was before the second lockdown. So we have pretty good data on how smokers in the Netherlands respond to the COVID-19 crisis. And what we see is that 19% of smokers say they were smoking more because of COVID-19, and 14% say they smoke less. So a little bit more smokers say they are now consuming more cigarettes because of the corona crisis than smokers saying that they are smoking less. So that's the challenge, that actually smokers smoke more because they are feeling stressed. They are more in isolation. They don't go out to bars and restaurants where it is not allowed to smoke, but it is allowed to smoke at home. They are also bored, so they think they need a cigarette. So that's the challenge, that smokers are smoking more. And also our National Institute for Public Health did a calculation to see whether this is also has an impact on our objective to get to 5% smokers in 2040. And they calculated that by the looks of it at the moment, the corona crisis will result in 1% more smokers in the period 2021-2015. Or sorry, to 2020 and the years to come, resulting in more death and injuries by smoking. So it will be harder to get to our goal in 5% to 2040. So that's the challenge, also for the government. But the positive thing is that a lot of smokers, there is also a group of smokers who say they smoke less because of wanting to live a more healthy life, also to have clean lungs, to be more protective for the corona and the COVID-19. And also we saw also in our survey that we did a Stoptober campaign, a mass media campaign, and quite substantial numbers of smokers took part in the Stoptober campaign. And about half of them say they were more motivated to take part because of the corona. So there's also, I think, something positive coming out of this. So there's overall, I think it is more challenging, but there are also opportunities, and we can take advantage of that. Maybe also implementing more e-health type of interventions, making sure that we have a strong telephone counseling system. So actually at the moment, it may be interesting to say that at Trimbos Institute, we are trying to coordinate a European sort of network of telephone quitline services. So we have telephone quitline in the Netherlands, but also other countries have telephone quitlines, national quitlines. And if we now bring together our experiences in how we can implement and promote our quitline services to a better effect, we can also help to, because a quitline service is something that can always be done without a face-to-face contact. And also you can combine that maybe with something like a chat box or e-health, or maybe even blended care. So we are also now experimenting with what we can do with chat boxes, for example, and maybe, you know, sort of learn from each other, from other countries in Europe as well. So that's maybe also one way to go forward to take advantage of the opportunity. And then the last point that I want to make is that because COVID-19 is putting a lot of pressure on the healthcare system, we are now in the Netherlands very much aware in the Netherlands that the healthcare system is costing a lot of money also in the future, and we can't keep up on our high level. We don't have that money. So prevention of disease is becoming more and more important. So we now see a movement in the Netherlands that there's a lot of support also among politicians for putting prevention in general more higher on the political agenda, and maybe in the next government to get more money also for prevention. And I think that's also something that can come out of this crisis as well.
Dear Mark, really thank you for your intervention and pointing out about the prevention, because really the health services is really very costly. And we can also, and one point, and we already discussed that taxation is one of the way to take more money and also to intervene and to put in the prevention activities. But at the end, I want really to ask some of quite like a brainstorming question more, because during the pandemic we have numerous challenges, and all of you there mentioned it, and including the publication of the misleading information. But how do you think, how we collectively ensure that public health community voice is louder and stronger than the tobacco industry, that funding groups, through the researchers, through others, just to put the public health voice quite stronger? What do you think? What we have to do as a public health workers? I will start with Giuseppe.
Okay, I'd like to say about something about smoking cessation, because I think that this situation is a big opportunity. There is a big opportunity to launch something on smoking cessation that is not a face-to-face intervention. I think that we perhaps every European country we receive a lot of money from Europe, you know, and I think that we people from tobacco control, we have to design something that involve quit lines. For instance, in Italy, the national quit line had a lot of calls during the pandemic, above all the first lockdown. But also, I think that we can develop a more comprehensive intervention with web-based interventions. For instance, application for smoking cessation linked to quit lines, web platforms for you. As you remember, the former smoker are unforgettable, unstoppable. Do you remember the campaign launched about 10 years ago from Europe with one of the first application? It was not an application, it was a text message platform. And I think that we can start developing something about smoking cessation in using the internet and the quit line together. I think that, for instance, and link these big intervention with media campaigns, as for instance the Stop October campaign that Mark already mentioned for the Netherlands, but also it was developed in France or in UK. I think that the money for tobacco control will be invested in these two main pillars: smoking cessation interventions in the website and the quit lines, and also media campaigns linked together. I think that this is a good opportunity because, for instance, in Italy and in other Southern Europe countries, we have a few of these tools for smokers. And so it will be a good challenge, a good opportunity, a good occasion to develop these, not only for Southern Europe, but also for Eastern Europe and Northern Europe, for all of us, as it was the first campaign developed by the European Commission about more than 10 years ago. The ex-smoker are unstoppable. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Yeah, it's good points as well there. I just want to mention that this year, the WHO also launched their IT machine, the Florence, also there to provide a brief intervention for cessation. It's not like a cessation tool, but it's like a brief intervention to advise smokers to quit. At the same time, we should not forget about the main tobacco control measures that really is focused on to reduce, yes, to balance, to provide assistance to smokers to quit, but also to enforce and really enforce strong tobacco control measure, and these have to be put into place. But I come back to the questions, and I want to address to the Monica. Monica, what do you think? Because you mentioned about the communication, how we can do or put the public health voice stronger to the public.
Briefly, I think, and I know that tobacco industry has a very strong marketing, and maybe public health needs to improve the scope of its messages. It is crucial to work with, as Giuseppe said, with media to place the right messages to public. And I think that health messages, good health messages or cessation campaigns may be undermined by news. News, for example, heralding a potential protective effect related to nicotine, without, for example, pointing out that nicotine and smoking, should not be confused. So it's crucial to work with media.
Thank you, Monica. Esteve, we practically be at the end. It's already 6 o'clock. Do you have more time for there, or we have to close the session?
I would have 5 minutes more with to finalize. If you want to have a new question or ask the opinion of some of our colleagues about the same topic that we were just talking about.
Yeah, I maybe just ask the same question to Mark, and maybe to conclude with this.
Yes, thank you. That's another. I think we have to do, I think it's sort of has been said already, but we have to do two things. So in balance, on one hand, to silence the industry to better implement 5.3. So that can be done by court cases, for example, to take the government accountable because they have to abide and implement 5.3. So we did it in the Netherlands. It was successful. The court case was not won, but it made the point that 5.3 is something that governments should adhere to because FCTC is a legal abiding treaty. So that's important to do that, and also to promote the idea that civil society, politicians, but also policymakers at the regional level, not only at the national level, that 5.3 is there and that it is alive, and that the government communicates that it is important. So to do that, to silence the industry, and on the other hand, to make sure that the health organizations are stronger, working together with the media. It's also something that Monica made points. So in the Netherlands, we have investigative journalists, and they try to figure out and find out what the strategies are, that the things, the workings of the industry. So they put that in the media, on websites. We have a dedicated websites where everything that the industry does is followed and put to the public. And then you see that politicians ask questions to policymakers in parliament. So naming and shaming and making the tobacco industry more negative, so that you don't want to be associated with a negative industry, is I think also very important. So if you do those things, the balance will shift, and then you will be in a much better position in the future. So in the Netherlands, actually, we saw the shifting took place several years ago, and now we are in a better position. And I wish that other countries will also, come to a position that they see this shifting of balance as well.
Dear Mark, thank you. Really very good points. And we already passed our 5 minutes. Esteve, its floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that we are closing this table. I do appreciate very much the participation of our colleagues, Mark, Ludmila, Monica, Giuseppe, from different parts of Europe. And I believe that we have shared very good experiences and opinions and have taken a nice picture of how this interaction between smoking and COVID-19 is affecting tobacco control at this point. I believe that this is important, and thank you, all of you, very much. And, well, I invite also the rest of the colleagues participating in the symposium to turn on their cameras. Sheila, Lisa, Christina, you are here. It would be nice, also because I want to take a picture, But it's the moment to thank you, about all the effort for this symposium, because it's great to have you joining this afternoon with I believe that all of us are very big these very hard times, and having the opportunity, hi Armando, I didn't mention you, having the opportunity to share again and to think about, because I believe that all public also has had the opportunity to participate in the channel. We are taking several take-home messages. I guess that according to our field of interest and our specialization within tobacco control. So for me, I want to thank you in the name of the WHO Collaborating Center and the Catalan Institute of Oncology. We have had very nice words from the Deputy General 3 hours ago, and also from the Deputy Director General of Health Promotion from our government. So thank you. It's an honor to be organizing together with the WHO European Region Office this event this year, without expecting that work is unable, but I believe that the outcomes from this symposium are than those than that we expected previously, and I thank you again very, very much. Thanks, and this is all. We'll take a picture, Christina, and also I for this. Thank you to all attendees who register but have joined us and shared as a comments with all of us. Thank you very much to all of you.
Hi.
Merry Christmas for all.
Ay.
And Merry Christmas indeed.
Sí,
Yes.
feliz Navidad.
Gracias.
Gracias. Bye.
Hey,
Thank you so much. Yes, Christina is not here.
It's not here. Perhaps she's not.
Now, people we have had 200 connects at the same time, and with an increasing, and no those to follow up after the break. So thank you very much again. I don't know whether they listening to us.
Okay.
That's very necessary to congratulate the picture.
Picture again.
Smile. Okay. Great. Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Of symposium
Good
will
evening,
be available
everyone.
in a few days. Okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you to all.
Okay, I have turned off